Long before the incident, before the screaming, before the hyperspace embargo on REM states, there was peace, silence, and sleep. The Somniarians, an ancient alien species with translucent skin and multi-tiered nervous systems, had built their empire not through war or wealth, but through dreams. Their greatest philosophers slept for centuries to compose single sentences. Their architects designed cities while dreaming in hexagonal logic fields. Their scientists communicated discoveries through oniric harmonics, dream frequencies that only other Somniarians could decipher. To them, dreaming wasn't an escape. It was infrastructure. And yet, something had changed. A distortion had begun to ripple through the galactic dreamstream, a low static hum, barely perceptible but persistent. Like a baby screaming at the back of a cathedral. The kind of noise you try to ignore but eventually realize has rewritten your brain chemistry. The Somniarian Council, a 12-being chorus of dream-synced elders, traced the source to a planet on the outer edge of the Orion Spur. A curious blue and green world known to some traders as Dirtball Prime, and to its own inhabitants as Earth. At first, the Council dismissed it. Primitive, chaotic, biologically loud. But the signal persisted, oscillating not in language, but in emotion. Confusion, longing, panic, joy, despair, and then, oddly, laughter. Eventually, a new theory emerged from the Temple of Somnolence. Perhaps these Earthlings were not the source of the interference, but rather, an untapped font of harmonic dream potential. A rare phenomenon, known in Somniarian culture as the neurogleam. A planetary node from which unconscious resonance could amplify and enrich the dreams of nearby minds. The promise was intoxicating. And so, the project began. They called it the Tranquility Array, a massive orbital structure shaped like a woven silver lotus, floating just outside Earth's magnetic field. Built from dreamstone and laced with somnolite crystals, it would passively absorb human neural emissions during the sleep cycle and rebroadcast them in filtered form to the Somniarian mindscape. It would be the galaxy's first shared lucid dream, seeded by an entire species. A revolutionary advancement in collective cognition. The Somniarians were giddy. Or at least, their version of giddy, which involved blinking slightly faster and humming in harmonic intervals. "We will cradle our thoughts in the song of a billion minds," said High Sleeper Arvash, as the array came online. And from it, divine the next age of peace. They stationed a small crew aboard the orbiting platform. Just 12 Somniarian attuners, monks, engineers, and lucid channel pilots, tasked with calibrating the signal before the full planetary dream harvest began. On night 1, all was silent. The crew synced with the human delta wave emissions and entered a shared rest state. There were no visions, only ambient colors, swirls of blue, vague shapes that hinted at trees and pavement. One attuner mumbled something about grilled cheese and smiled. They recorded the experience as mildly nourishing. Night 2, the dreams became slightly more textured. Faint images of stairs, elevators, doorways. The engineers noted that while Earth's dream output lacked precision, it had volume. Massive quantities of unstructured thought, compressed into every slumbering moment. But no red flags. Nothing dangerous. No mind ghosts or astral parasites. And then came Night 3. It began at 4:03 Universal Central Time. Attuner Valus, a quiet dream architect with 4 eyes and a shell of vibrating nodes, woke suddenly. He was clutching his own arms, gasping, the breath escaping him like steam from a broken pipe. His eyes didn't blink. They spiraled. The others ran to him. "What did you see?" asked Arvash. Valus whispered. It had a painted face. It kept juggling its own teeth. This was not alarming in itself. The Somniarians had long encountered the occasional stray image from incompatible minds. What was alarming was that the dream imprint left behind was unusually dense. A full terabyte of fear frequency, stored directly in Valus' hippocampal resonance chamber. This meant one thing. He hadn't just seen the dream, he had lived it. And then the rest began to stir. Attuner Drell woke up screaming about a test I never studied for, in a language I never learned. Attuner Nuva tried to climb a wall that wasn't there, shouting, The Lobster King knows my browsing history. A tuner solemn simply rocked back and forth, repeating, "There's a hallway with no end. And every door leads to an HR meeting." The rest of the crew panicked. For a people whose sanity and society depended entirely on restful sleep, the breach of serenity was nothing short of existential. Arvash initiated Dreamlock, sealing the crew's minds from Earth signal for analysis. But it was too late. The dreams had bled into their systems, into their backup memory stones, into the Lotus's harmonics. Earth's dreams, chaotic, nonlinear, emotionally unhinged, had begun to overwrite centuries of carefully cultivated oniric protocol. One engineer ran diagnostics. He played back the Earth signal from that night. It had spiked, massively, due to something called global shared media consumption. The humans had all fallen asleep watching the same thing. Something called a horror movie marathon. At first, the Somniarians thought they could fix it. Just recalibrate the frequencies, create a filter, maybe adjust the waveform to filter out the terror. But then the realization hit. Earthlings don't filter their dreams. They generate them. Randomly, unconsciously, and relentlessly. Every single night. Billions of minds. Unsynchronized, volatile, drenched in primal symbolism and unresolved trauma. And worst of all, they liked it. These weren't accidental signals. The horror, the absurdity, the tax anxiety, the clown juggling. Humans actively fed their dreams with fear, shame, wonder, and guilt, and called it entertainment. Earth wasn't a neurogleam. It was a psychic minefield. The tranquility array began to degrade on night 4. Panels melted into abstract geometry. One dream harvester turned into a recursive Mobius loop that pulsed with the word clown in every known language. Arvash tried to stabilize the systems by initiating a memory chant, only to be interrupted by a projection of a sock puppet yelling, "Where's your receipt, Arvash?" He fainted. The report that followed would later be classified under code X0 REM. Planetary Dream Hazard. Unfiltered Emission Source. It was the first such classification in galactic history. And so, the array was abandoned. The crew evacuated. A warning beacon was left in orbit, broadcasting the same message in every known dialect. Do not attempt to sleep within $0 of Planet 3. Dream field unstable. Side effects include panic, laughter, tax anxiety, and clownophobia. Down below, humanity continued dreaming. Restless, strange, wonderfully disturbed, and blissfully unaware of the chaos they'd unleashed in the skies above. At first, the symptoms were subtle. After the collapse of the Tranquility Array, the 12 Somniarian attuners were returned to their homeworld under stasis, each sealed in individual dream-neutral biopods and quarantined under the strictest psychic containment protocols. Official diagnosis: neuroexistential contamination. The medical division didn't understand what that meant either. But they knew it was bad. Valus, the first to suffer full immersion into human dream logic, had begun twitching in sync with non-existent music. His neural spires pulsed in erratic Morse-like bursts. When asked what he was experiencing, his translator sputtered only a single phrase before catching fire. "It's a funeral. But everyone's dressed as accountants." Psychic trauma was not uncommon among dream-faring species. The Somniarians had helped whole civilizations recover from collective grief dreams, fear fields, and even transdimensional insomnia pandemics. But this was different. This was absurd. And it was spreading. While Earth continued to snooze, snuggled in its planetary blanket of anxiety-ridden slumber, the residual signal from the now-defunct Tranquility Array leaked into the surrounding sectors. It wasn't meant to propagate. But human dreams are stubborn things. What began as a soft pulse of shared terror and surrealism mutated in deep space, twisting through hyperlane tunnels and subthought bandwidths. By the time it reached the planet Harmutha, homeworld of the species known as the Galmorith, it was no longer just noise, it was content. The Galmorith were a species of logic-bound crustaceans, famed for their clarity of mind and absolute lack of imagination. Their societies were constructed around algorithmic precision. Their language had no word for nightmare. Until that night. It started in the city of Call 3, a hydro-intelligence research node. A junior technician named Nax fell asleep during a scheduled recharge interval and began screaming. Not just twitching, not muttering, screaming. A 12-legged, 7-eyed, shell-armored scream, echoing through the lab's vents like a whale choking on static. When Nax was revived, he clutched his own mandibles and stammered something in a tone never before recorded among his people. Fear. I was in a kitchen, but the food kept multiplying. And my mother, she had no eyes, only coupons. The lab assumed contamination. Perhaps a neural virus. They isolated Nax, monitored him, until 2 more researchers began having the same dream. Not similar dreams. The same dream. A recursive, looping hallucination involving a rubbery man with a honking nose offering existential advice in rhyme. At first, they thought it was a shared hallucination. But across Harmutha, more citizens began waking from sleep with odd behaviors. Irrational cravings for pancakes, attempts to juggle live plasma worms, or spontaneous weeping at the phrase tax deductible. The signal had found them. The Galactic Council convened an emergency broadcast. Beings of all shapes and mindscapes logged in, vapor ascensions, silicon-based philosophers, hive minds encoded into language patterns. The topic? Planetary dream leakage. The Earth problem. Ambassador Ray of the Somniarians, pale, shaking, eyes bloodshot with insomnia, presented the data. His voice trembled like a lullaby with teeth. We thought Earth was a neurogleam, a source of shared insight. But it is. A chaos core. A dream engine driven by unresolved trauma and wild metaphor. Their minds, they invent horror on purpose. One AI delegate asked, for what purpose would a species weaponize its own dreams? Ray's voice cracked. For fun. Silence followed. Across the council feed, several entities blinked out of sync. One levitated counselor dissolved into mist and fled. The Somniarians presented more footage. Earth signal data decoded into dreamscapes. A man running endlessly down a hallway lined with clocks that melt if looked at too long. A baby wearing a crown made of debt. A teenage girl whispering secrets to a horse that slowly turns into her father's voicemail. And, universally disturbing, a clown standing under a flickering streetlight, holding a tax return and weeping. Clowns. Death. Taxes. 3 universal constants. Combined. Repeated. Amplified. Some galactic species were unaffected. Those with no sleep cycles, no imagination cortex, or naturally occurring dream barriers simply shrugged off the signal. But others, especially those with shared dream matrices or psychic link traditions, were highly vulnerable. Entire ships lost cohesion when their crews began hallucinating contradictory realities mid-sleep. One diplomacy vessel from the EFO-RIN Combine drifted off course when its pilot began dreaming of being a toaster at a job interview. The Vrax, a reptilian warrior species with collective REM states, suffered a mass nightmare event. Upon waking, they declared war on abstract concepts. Their first target was the passage of time. The infection was now interstellar. What the Somniarians hadn't predicted, what no one predicted, was that human dreams weren't just a hazard. They were sticky. They clung to thoughts, replicated in metaphor, embedded themselves into psychic resonance structures. The more you resisted them, the more they took root. Which brings us to the worst part. In orbit around Deluvener 5, aboard a Zentari dream vessel designed for interspecies empathy experiments, the crew tried a bold move. They decided to listen to a full human dream stream directly. No filters. Full immersion. They chose one subject. A sleeper in Ohio, age 47, dreaming on a Wednesday morning. The dream was broadcast in real time. They tuned in. For 6 minutes, all was silent. Then the Zentari Dream Master, an ethereal being of pure sentiment named Ilovex, let out a scream that shattered every crystal node in the chamber. Glass, metal, psychic lattices, all collapsed. The sound echoed not in ears, but in meaning. Every listener experienced their worst fear, not visually, but emotionally. Some heard a scream shaped like regret. Others, a scream that smelled like being left behind. Ilovex had seen a vision. A bureaucratic nightmare in which their cosmic taxes had been misfiled, and their eternal soul was being audited by a man with a balloon animal shaped like entropy. The Council had no choice. Containment beacons were deployed in orbit around Earth. Not physical structures, but psychic dampeners, tuned to suppress the outbound REM waves with counterharmonics. Earth became a quarantine sleep zone. Traders were warned. Avoid sleep while passing Sol system. Neural interference is active. Exposure time over 90 seconds risks psychological distortion and dream loop feedback. Tourism plummeted. Navigation routes rerouted around Earth's dream sphere. Black market dream filters surged in demand. The Somniarians retreated entirely, declaring Earth philosophically incompatible with galactic serenity. And yet, across the void, signals still slipped through. Somehow, in all their chaos, Earth's dreams persisted. A rogue frequency. A subconscious anomaly. On Earth, a man in Indiana mumbled in his sleep about being chased by a duck with legal authority. A girl in Nairobi dreamt she was underwater, in a courtroom, being judged by her childhood toys. A grandmother in Seoul dreamed of driving a car that never stopped, through cities that didn't exist, toward a meeting she didn't want. The nightmares flowed freely, colorful, chaotic, beautiful. And somewhere in the stars, 1,000 alien minds stirred and screamed. By the time the Galactic Council declared Earth a Class A somnopath, it was already too late. Humanity slept on, unaware, unbothered, and dreaming wildly. Night after night, their minds poured into the void, unchecked, streaming nonlinear logic, symbolic trauma, and oddly specific clown metaphors into the cosmic subconscious. But while psychic dampeners now surrounded Earth's orbit like dream catchers of last resort, a bigger problem had begun festering across known space. The dreams were evolving. They no longer merely broadcast absurd terrors. They replicated, transformed, and infiltrated. This was not transmission anymore. It was contagion. It started with a blip on the Valari Hyperdream Network, a quantum-entangled mind-sharing lattice that connected over 40 sentient species for diplomatic simulations and interspecies therapy. The network was meant to be impermeable, each node encrypted by ancestral brainwave harmonics to prevent foreign intrusion. And yet, one morning cycle, over 70% of users reported the same glitch. A middle-aged Earth male, wearing an oversized novelty tie and roller skates, appeared in their dreams. He only said one phrase, over and over. "You forgot to pay the scream tax." No one understood what it meant. But every time he spoke, a sudden sharp guilt accompanied it. So strong that one hive species tried to excommunicate their own queen for neglecting emotional paperwork. The Valari tried isolating the infected dream nodes. They even disconnected their core servers for 12 hours. But the dream persisted. The Earth frequency had found the neural lace, and was now using it to traverse emotion-first, logic-second networks. Human dreams had become viral code, not just broadcastable, but transmissible via empathy. And the universe, ironically, had grown too empathic to resist. To address the wave of insomnia, anxiety, and phantom circus smells now sweeping across space, the Interstellar Mind Care Collective launched the Lucid Stabilization Initiative, also known as Project Sandvale. The idea was noble. Synthesize a universal dream buffer using neutral psychic patterns from all known species, then play it on loop in high-density sleep zones to override any corrupted dream input. The test zone was the moon base of Cytherian 3, home to over 4,000 beings. Scientists, artists, diplomats, and a delegation of blind philosophers from the Tantalos Belt. On night 1, all was calm. Dream field monitors reported synchronized thought fields. No anomalies. A shared vision of a peaceful orchard beneath twin moons. Some dreamed of waterfalls. Others floated peacefully through zero-gravity bookshops. Until someone laughed. A deep, slow human laugh. Taxes are just nightmares with paperwork. The dream buffer flickered. The orchard trees began producing clocks instead of fruit. The waterfalls turned into shredders spewing unpaid invoices. A sheep wandered into the dreamscape, wearing a bow tie, and began reciting Kafka. The dream field collapsed in 6 minutes. The base woke up screaming. One artist painted a spiral that only expressed regret. A scientist kept asking what clown insurance was and why he suddenly believed in it. The blind philosophers were silent, and then began crying. It was now undeniable. The human dream contagion was not just infecting individuals. It was rewriting shared psychic architecture across entire species. The Council of Psycholinguistic Integrity, a body that hadn't been convened since the great existential collapse of the Screaming Moons, issued the unthinkable. Dreamfall Protocol is active. Every civilization with dream-sharing technology was ordered to disable their neural harmonizers. Psychic temples were shuttered. Telepathic link rituals were suspended. Even mating bonds among telepathic species were to be delayed indefinitely. Every dream-sensitive structure in the galaxy went dark. It was the single largest empathy lockdown in recorded history. The galaxy grew quiet and cold. For the first time in over 1,000 years, no one was allowed to feel what others felt. Not all species complied. The Delphiri, a race of living emotion clouds, relied on dream sharing to survive. Their leaders rejected the protocol, calling it a fearful overreaction to a small, wet species with no sense of inner decorum. They went on to build their own dream-proof hub near the star Bellari Prime. Heavily shielded, quantum-purged, with human wave filters set at 300% redundancy. They lasted 4 days. On the 5th day, the entire collective fell into a mass vision of being chased by a floating clipboard through an endless DMV made of bone. One Delphiri tried to shred itself into forgetfulness. Another developed a permanent echo of the phrase, "Please hold. Your apocalypse is important to us." The contagion's power wasn't only in horror. It was in incongruity. It mixed the mundane with the impossible. It made the meaningless feel heavy. It cloaked absurdity in dread and asked, what if this matters more than anything? One Theraxa commander, normally immune to dreams, reported seeing a child's drawing of a dinosaur, handing him a court summons. Another, from the crystalline Draz, described an endless staircase made of misremembered conversations and lukewarm coffee. One Varn general, resistant to all known mind attacks, merely said, "I saw a box labeled, 'Emotions Not Dealt With.' I opened it. I saw me." As the galaxy collapsed inward under the weight of psychic absurdity, Earth continued its nightly ritual. Dreams without filters, without shame, without structure. A billion minds conjuring. Exploding high schools filled with werewolves that judge your resume. Dinosaurs debating politics on live television. That one ex you never got closure from, now a giant turtle delivering pizza. Death, dressed as a barista, correcting your grammar mid-eulogy. Rooms within restrooms that lead to places you forgot you feared. And through it all, clowns. Always clowns. Sometimes crying. Sometimes tax collecting. Sometimes both. High dreamer Arvash, who had initiated the Tranquility Array so long ago, now lived in permanent lucid isolation on a sleep station orbiting the rogue moon Enthak 11. He hadn't dared close his eyes in 600 rotations. But on the day Dreamfall Protocol began, he transmitted one final message across secured galactic channels. It played only once, and has since been sealed in the Hall of Cautionary Knowledge. In it, Arvash is pale, gaunt, trembling. He whispers, "We dreamed to discover truth. They dreamed to survive chaos. We sought clarity. They celebrate nonsense. We wanted harmony. They laugh at it." He holds up a hand. A child's drawing flickers into view. Crayon scribbles of a man riding a tax form into battle against a clown king. "Do not pity them," Arvash says. "Fear them. For they've built empires on the unstable foundation of dreams. And Earth, it kept sleeping and dreaming and changing the galaxy. One nightmare, one joke, one unresolved metaphor at a time. For centuries, the galactic core had been a place of peace. Empires rose and fell, stars were born and buried, but within the Council's gravity-locked halls, surrounded by ancient neural sanctuaries and mind-sharing sanctums, civilizations dreamed together. Not just of peace, but through peace. That was before Earth. Now the universe had a new phrase burned into its consciousness. Never sleep near a human. The warning had gone from whispered superstition to official doctrine. It was etched onto border beacons, carved into hyperspace markers, stamped in blinking red glyphs on travel documents. And across every inhabited world, one icon became universal. A simple white pillow, slashed through by a red line. Above Earth, the orbital buffer zone had been expanded into a full-blown silence field. A neural dead zone built with 7 concentric rings of psychic dampeners. Each ring pulsed in slow, opposing frequencies to cancel out any thought form emission from the sleeping planet below. It was the galactic equivalent of stuffing your fingers in your ears and screaming la 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 forever. Ships passing through the Sol system were required to disengage empathy nodes, shut down REM conduits, and disable all dream-receptive organelles. No telepaths were permitted within $0.50. Insurance companies created new clauses. Dream exposure riders, charging exorbitant rates for any journey within psychic splash radius. Still, the Earth signal leaked. No matter how many layers they built, the dreams still clawed their way outward, like whispered rumors from behind a locked door. Occasionally, they'd slip through in strange bursts. A synthetic AI on Venus dreaming it was a single mother. A moon base on Ganymede suddenly overtaken by philosophical fear of clowns. A drone swarm near Mars glitching into synchronized, rhythmic screaming about unpaid loans. The silence field dulled the signal, but it could not erase the source. Because the humans kept dreaming. And worse, they never dreamed the same thing twice. The Galactic Council's new task force, Dream Shield Command, was granted emergency authority to launch Operation Blank Slate, a last-ditch attempt to shut Earth's dreams down at the source. Phase 1 was observation. Phase 2 was suppression. Phase 3. No one spoke about Phase 3. A fleet of Dream Shield drones, disguised as meteors, descended into Earth's atmosphere. Each was equipped with a neural absorption core, a compact lattice of void crystal designed to absorb and dampen psychic energy over wide radii. Their mission was simple: deploy quietly across major sleep clusters and begin draining neural chaos into contained black boxes. At first, it seemed to work. Sleep reports dipped. Nightmares grew hazy. Astral frequencies dropped to manageable levels. On day 3, the Dream Shield Command celebrated. On day 4, it all fell apart. The problem wasn't the extraction. It was the compression. Each Dream Shield core absorbed hundreds of dreams per second. Unfiltered, unprocessed, and deeply human. And dreams, it turns out, don't like being caged. The first rupture occurred over Bangkok. A Dream Shield drone exploded mid-air, releasing a wave of stored dream matter in a 30-kilometer radius. Witnesses reported the sky turning into a ceiling fan, the clouds raining unpaid medical bills, and a single voice booming across the city in perfect unison. You didn't finish high school. And now the ducks know. Similar events followed across Lagos, Buenos Aires, Seoul, Karachi, and Denver. The dreams did not just return, they retaliated. In Geneva, one woman screamed herself into a coma after dreaming of a courtroom made of her ex-boyfriend's apologies. In Tokyo, a subway train collectively dreamed itself into an existential riddle that caused 3 people to speak only in refrigerator metaphors for a week. The rebound effect became known as the REM lash. Dream Shield Command collapsed under political backlash and literal psychic trauma. Operation Blank Slate was scrubbed. The fallout was far-reaching. The Basilith Syndicate, a council of sentient law codes, demanded reparations after their mainframe spontaneously rewrote its core identity as Clownius III, sovereign of subpoenas. Laws began enforcing themselves emotionally. The hive world of Uran 9, whose society operated on empathic consensus, tore itself apart in 18 hours after a single member dreamt of being judged by mushrooms in a cafeteria filled with dying planets. Even the Vrax Imperial warships, previously immune to psychic attack, reported sudden emotional mutiny. A ship AI known as Clarity of Ruin filed for emotional bankruptcy after dreaming it had feelings. And that those feelings were unrequited. One Vrax commander, frothing with exhaustion, punched through a hologram during a council broadcast and shouted, "They dream in parables and puns. They're weaponizing whimsy." The chamber went silent. He was right. With war on the table and no clean path forward, the Galactic Council passed the most ironic law in its 8,000-year history. The Dream Treaty of Soul. Clause 1. No interstellar being shall enter Earth's psychic field while conscious. Clause 2. No attempt shall be made to extract, translate, or analyze human dreams. Clause 3. Earth shall remain neutral, sovereign, and contained. Clause 4. All galactic maps shall label Earth with its new official designation. Sector 0M. Dream Hazard Zone. Do not disturb. Humanity, unaware of any of this, continued to snore, toss, and mumble through its chaotic REM cycles. Meanwhile, alien civilizations built monuments around the treaty. Some worshipped it. Some feared it. Some treated it like the ancient warning label on a cursed tome. Sleep here and madness follows. Despite every warning, curiosity grew. Bootleg dream simulations based on recovered Earth signals sold for thousands of credits in underground markets. Artists smuggled fragments of Earth nightmares into gallery shows as chaos installations. One infamous piece, a sculpture of a screaming tax return shaped like a swan, triggered mass weeping on New Seraphis. A cult emerged among the Kolrathi, a water-based species whose priests now believed Earth to be the birthplace of the primordial joke. The unexplainable, irrational chaos laughter from which all existence arose. They reenacted famous Earth dreams during ceremonies. The naked speech at school. The teeth falling out. The elevator to the sideways mall. And of course, the clown with taxes. Some Kolrathi even began painting their faces in tribute, whispering, through the nonsense, comes truth. And still, humanity slept. One man dreamed he was an ant suing God for emotional negligence. One child dreamed she was a balloon that never landed. An old woman dreamed she was asked to teach math to ghosts, but only if she could prove she deserved it. No one remembered the dreams in full. But the chaos lived on, silent, swirling, encoded in every sigh, every twitch, every snore. They weren't dreams anymore. They were doctrines. Unwritten, unshaped, unstoppable. Above Earth, beyond the last ring of the silence field, a diplomatic probe from a distant star nation drifted into orbit. Inside, a young alien ambassador in training peered down through reinforced emotion shields, watching the blue marble below. She asked the pilot, "They don't even know what they're doing to us, do they?" The pilot, eyes hollow from dream exposure, only muttered, "They don't need to." Outside the window, a floating sign shimmered, blinking with soft red light. Do not disturb. They're still dreaming. The universe had never feared a species quite like this. Not because they were violent. Not because they were technologically superior. Not because they had conquered stars or harvested black holes. But because they dreamed. And kept dreaming. Even when told not to. Even when warned. Even when the galaxy built walls around their sleeping minds, placed them in silence fields, locked them inside empathy-proof zones. The humans dreamed louder. Not in volume, but in depth. Not in logic, but in metaphor. And no one knew what to do anymore. The Dream Treaty of Soul had failed to contain the damage. Despite neural dampeners, despite embargoes on dream analysis, despite emergency teleport relays activated when REM fluctuations spiked, the dreams kept leaking. The Galactic Council met in an emergency midnight session, under the blood-orange light of a collapsing dwarf star. Representing nearly 600 conscious civilizations, they convened not in person but through converged empathy chambers, wired for silent consensus. By unanimous vote, they passed the last measure they had left. Dream Quarantine Protocol 99X. Full isolation of humanity. Earth would no longer simply be left alone. It would be sealed. No broadcasts in. No neural feedback out. No observation, no diplomacy, no curiosity. Just silence. The construction of the quarantine zone became the largest collaborative engineering effort in galactic history. It wasn't physical. It wasn't military. It was psychospatial, a lattice of perception distortion nodes surrounding Earth's star system, bending both time and attention. Any vessel approaching would instinctively turn away, unable to remember why they had come. This wasn't censorship. It was psychic amnesia. They called it the forgetting veil. The technology behind it was ancient, unearthed from extinct precognitive species who had long since erased themselves from history out of philosophical embarrassment. The result: Earth vanished. Not literally, not visually, but cognitively. It became that planet. The one no one talks about. The one whose name feels like static when spoken aloud. Some called it the sleeping world. Others, sector null. One race simply referred to it as Shu. Time drifted forward. Empires rose again, fell again. Dyson spheres bloomed like steel flowers around newborn stars. Memory farms were grown in thought space fields. Entire species uploaded themselves into planetary clouds to escape boredom. But Earth remained. Still there. Still dreaming. And despite all precautions, despite the veil, despite layers upon layers of neural blindfolds, the dreams still found ways out. It started as a single word, whispered in the dreams of a child on the planet Ilox Prime. A world with no known contact history with humanity, no dream channels active for millennia. She woke crying. "They're funny," she said. "But not haha funny. The other kind." She drew a picture of a duck wearing a judge's robe, pointing at a galaxy on trial. From there, more signals followed. Sporadic. Strange. A scholar from the Rings of Vel dreamed he was trapped in a room made of unfinished emails. A war veteran from the asteroid towns of Valis, 9 began compulsively humming a tune no one recognized, until it was matched to a 21st century Earth jingle for toothpaste. A therapist from the choir world screamed during a live broadcast. Why are the clowns also the auditors? The leak wasn't coming from technology. It wasn't electromagnetic. Wasn't subspace. Wasn't psychic. It was conceptual. Human dreams had achieved a new form, mimetic entanglement. They were no longer thoughts. They were ideas that wanted to be found. Of course, someone had to break the rules. His name was Micker Thal, a freelance documentary architect from the floating archives of Cygnus Theta. His reputation was built on visiting forbidden worlds, exposing galactic truths, and emotionally blackmailing civilizations into reconciliation. He had a theory. What if the dreams aren't poison? What if they're evolution? He designed a stealth vessel. Wrapped in unthought, fueled by abstract shame, and powered by a half-functioning sarcastic AI, it slipped through the forgetting veil. And it worked. For 13 minutes. Then the ship's records degraded into nonsense. A log titled Lunch with My Shadow's Father. A diagram of stairs labeled Regret Amplifier. The last visual feed, a young human girl and an alien child sitting in a field of floating books, trading storybooks in silence. Then static. Micker Thal returned, physically unharmed. But every time someone asked him what he saw, he would laugh, then cry, then whisper. They dream in a circle. Their fears are their stories. Their trauma is the transmission. And then he would draw the same image. A peace treaty. Drifting in space. Signed by a child. And a clown. The council debated execution. Isolation. Memory wiping. But instead, they did something stranger. They archived Micker's findings, published them anonymously, and distributed them across select research collectives. The file was labeled The Clown, the Child, and the Core, Earth's Last Gift. And the strangest part? Some read it. Some cried. Some laughed. Some even dreamed. Truly dreamed. For the first time in generations. And so the galaxy changed again. Not through war. Not through innovation. But through an unwanted, uninvited story. Now, across the stars, there is a growing movement. Dreamwalkers. They don't approach Earth. They don't contact it. They simply remember it. They retell Earth dreams as myths, fables, prayers. They chant the tale of the swan made of tax forms. They wear painted smiles when grieving, to confuse the gods of sorrow. They teach their children about humanity not as fact, but as symbol. This is the world that never stopped dreaming, they say. And for that, we must never forget. What nonsense can teach us? Night falls. Billions sleep, unaware of the walls built around them. unaware of the species they've driven mad, unaware of the philosophies they've fractured, unaware of the piece they've rewritten, accidentally, absurdly, and beautifully. A man dreams he's back in high school, but the final exam is an interpretive dance, and the principal is his future child. A woman dreams she is a tree in court, testifying against the wind. A boy dreams of space, endless space, and in it, a single floating sign. Do not disturb. They're still dreaming. And just beyond that sign, another dream begins.